I'm Dave Brolin. This is Too Late with Dave, and I'm here with the legendary David Montgomery. I could have called him so many other things, but we're on camera. So this is another one of these unusual situations where we've known each other forever, so I know a lot of stuff about you and your work, but some of our followers may not. So you came over here from the States, from New York,
Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. And when was that?
I came here in 1960.
Yeah. And what made you decide to stay? You came here for a job?
Well, what happened was I worked for a guy called Lester Bookbinder, who was a great photographer, but he was a big New York commercial photographer. And he said he was going to England and did I want to come, but he wouldn't be able to pay much. I said, okay. And he was my whole education, and he knew everything, this guy, about photography and photographers. And a funny thing, before I said yes, he said, give it some time to think about before. He said, I'm probably going to go for months. I don't know. He said, I'm getting out of New York and I don't know what's going to happen.
Now, did he have a job here, or he was just trying his luck?
Trying his luck. So I scrounged around, and there was this top New York photographer called Howard Zeef, major advertising guy. And the word was out that he was looking for an assistant, and I went up to see him, and he had this gigantic studio, and Lester just had a big room. And anyway, I go see the guy. He was a very funny guy. He was he did comedy feature films later on.
Right.
And anyway, to cut it short, he interviews me, blah, blah, blah. He offers me the job at, I don't know, $800 a week. I was making like 70 when Lester could afford to pay me. I thought, I don't believe it. But then on the other hand, I got this trip to Europe. I get out of America, see the world. So I went to England. And got to England, and we had about 10 trunks of camera equipment because Lester shot on an 8x10 camera mainly, the advertising, and a Rolleiflex. And we got to London, and it was foggy, real fog. I'd never seen light like this before because in New York the light is really sharp in the winter, really sharp. And I fell in love with the light, really. And you didn't know where the sun was. And then, so gradually, when I started taking pictures, Lester stayed for a couple of months, and then he went back to America, and he left me on my own. The funny thing was that when I was with Lester, it was just him and me. And a lot of photographers and media people would invite Lester to parties, cocktail parties, and he always took me with him. And he'd introduce me to everybody, and I was just another kid. And he would introduce me and say, this is my assistant, David. He's a great photographer. He was just being nice. I didn't even have any pictures. Really. I mean, I had pictures I did on the street that some of them were good, but not to give me a recommendation like he was giving me. And he's saying, David's really good, this guy's really good. Well, guys like Terry Donovan and Bailey, they didn't want to, that's all they needed was somebody, because those guys couldn't handle more than one light at a time. So he goes back, and I found the studio on Edith Grove for £3 a week. and I painted it all black inside. Of course, Lester Studio was black. And there is a technical benefit of a black studio, but it is a bit, can get you depressed. And I used to play Nina Simone all the time and Billie Holiday. So people thought I was pretty depressing. But the black studio, even like on film, on color film, even if you have a white background, it gives it a richness that you don't understand, that black is kicking in without getting too technical about it. So anyway, I got the studio and I had some lights and no work. And then somehow I went up to Queen magazine and the Jocelyn Stevens owned it, and Barney Wan, Max Maxwell, Beatrice Miller was the editor. She went on to Vogue magazine, and they gave me some work to do. And so next thing I knew, they said, "Can you shoot fashion?" I said, "Yeah." I never shot a girl in my life besides my mother. I wasn't really interested in that, you know.
What would you be
Street
photographing?
photography.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Robert Frank and Gary Winograd. That was it. On Eugene Atjay, that ilk of photography. I didn't even know about fashion photography or who was good. So somewheres along the line, early in my career, I went to the Newport Jazz Festival because I love jazz. I used to be a drummer as well. So
You still are a drummer.
yeah, I still am a drummer now. The catalog for the Newport Jazz Festival, Richard Avedon did the photo essay. And I never saw pictures like this in my life. You know, I thought, what is this? And I met the one picture that really got me was his picture of Duke Ellington, black and white picture. And I thought, this is like hearing Miles Davis for the first time, you know. And the penny dropped that there was another way of looking at things and seeing things. So I was surrounded by it when I was an assistant in New York, and I used to know all the assistants were friendly with each other. The photographers wouldn't talk to each other. They hated each other just on general principle. But the assistants, so if the guy upstairs, Louis Fowler or one of these guys, he needed a roll of paper or a couple of rolls of plus X and he didn't have it, his assistant would call up me to ask my guy if we had to lend him. So we had this underground communal system. And then we all got together during the week, had a little club of assistants, and we said, okay, next week we're going to do this. So I couldn't shoot like Avedon or copy any of those people. I couldn't even I didn't know what I was doing anyway. So, you know, so these other guys would come in and they'd have replicas of Irving Penn and William Klein and blah, blah, blah. So I looked pretty doubtful. And I really was, oh my God. And I'm sorry I've gone back into time.
That's all right, we'll do that.
Okay, so then I said, I would say to Lester, you know, these guys are laughing at me. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. He said, first you got to learn how to wind cables up and put film in the camera. And it's like a tree. You got to learn all these basic things before you even take pictures. And then one day he says, okay, I've got a class I want you to go to. And it was a guy called Alexi Brodevitch, who was the art director of Harper's Bazaar. He discovered Avedon, Penn, Art Kane, all these great guys. He was great. He was a white Russian, grumpy guy. And, okay, so I go to the class, and there's about 10 guys there, and they all think, well, if Brodevitch likes me, he'll use me on Harper's Bazaar. Yeah. So I'm there with all these guys, and we're going to have one class, and everybody, come on, we'll all go for coffee, blah, blah, blah. So then the next week, we got an assignment, and then what would happen is all the photographers put their photographs on a table, no names, and Brodevitch would look at it and say, this person has diarrhea of the eyeballs. And he was horrible. Right? And he did about 4 people, and he picked up my picture, and then he started waxing lyrical about it. And even today, I'm ashamed to say all the wonderful things that he said about it. And then he finally said, who took this picture? Like that. I said, oh, good, do more. And then he went on and on. But at the end of the class, everybody walked out and ignored me. And from that time on, no one spoke to me again. So we had a couple more, 5 more classes, and he'd always pick out one of my pictures. He didn't know whose was whose.
So do you think you had like an instant style or something? Was there something?
It was reportage, and I used to hit. No, I don't know how it happened. I swear, I don't know how it happened. My father was an amateur, keen amateur. My bathroom was his dark room. I was brought up on the smell of hypo. Daddy always had a light meter around his neck, but he wasn't like an art photographer. He took a picture of my mother standing by the car, or my mother by the front door. Then it was like a miracle that it would come out on a Rolleiflex, a roller cord. And so it was the magic of photography. And I really don't know how it happened. I really don't know. And I took a picture on an Easter Day parade in New York, and I took this picture. I still think it's one of my best pictures. And the 10 people on the street, and they were all in the right position. And, you know, you don't really question it. I mean, you're lucky that it happened, because for every one picture, there must have been 25 not so good pictures. But Lester used to say, it only takes one. Only takes one. And so that's how it happened. And my hands were I used to develop black and white film. My left hand looked like I was a chain smoker. It was brown from the developer, you know, because my hands were always in developer in the dark room. So anyway, with all of this, I come to England. And then this light gave me this sort of slight poetry and light, you might say. Everything looked good. And I had a Pentax camera. And so I used to walk around the streets. I'd walk from Regent's Park to Sloane Square or whatever, all over, just taking pictures. And then finally, some David Bailey or one of those guys goofed up, and they asked me to do a reshoot. So I did the reshoot, and that was good. And then I got another job. Before I knew it, I was working.
One after the other. And then I'm going to jump around a little bit about that, but then suddenly, if you look on the screen there, you're in the opening credits of Blow Up, which is pretty much shaped.
Where is it?
See, can you see? It's behind you.
Yeah, is that me?
That's you.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
So like, Blow Up is obviously, you know, the go-to movie for every photographer's reference.
So what happened was, by this time I was shooting for Harper's Bazaar in England, and they called me up and said, Antonioni is doing a film, can he come down and watch you? I said, okay. Oh, everybody loved
So
it.
he wanted to observe how you worked.
How does a photographer do it? So everybody loved Antonioni at that time. He was doing all these fabulous movies. So he came down the studio, and the one thing nobody ever told me was he had a terrible tic. For the guy that was very severe in judging other people, he had this kind of, I guess, imperfection like that. So he came down, and I was doing the shooting with a girl. The fashion shootings, you know, there was no money, no budget, and I decided I would wrap the girls up in plastic, which I had seen Avedon do. Not to the extent that I did it, but he wrapped girls' heads in sheets of plastic. So I did it all, and we had good girls, English models doing it, and he saw me do that, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so then I get a phone call saying, could I come down on the film shooting with my camera? Okay, I didn't even ask questions or how much or anything. There was no any money. And then they said, my assistant, a guy called Reg Wilkins, Reg was a short guy, but he wanted to be a jockey. That was his first choice in life. He wanted to be a jockey. So he had like a jockey's body, you know. And so they said to me, you know, we can't find an assistant for the main photographer, David Hemmings. We can't find somebody, and your assistant is the right size because he was smaller than Hemmings. Can we use him? I said, if you pay him. So they paid him, and he bought a little house, and he just got married. So, okay, so he got that. So then, right. So then they say to me, okay, we'll go to Brixton Market, and we're going to shoot this model called Danielle Luna, and we want you to take pictures of her. So, okay. So I'm down there with camera with a telephoto lens. And she's on top of a stall. And so I'm shooting her. Click, 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 click. Yeah, great. And then I run out of film and 36 exposures. So I stop to rewind, and his assistant director runs up and he said, what the hell are you doing? I said, I'm changing the film. He said, this is a movie. You don't need film. I said, hey, I'm a photographer. I can't
pretend.
make believe I got, I'm not an actor. So he said, oh, go ahead, put the film in the camera, be quick. So I put the film in, and that was the end of it.
But did you know you were going to be in it, or
Kind of. And then I found out later that I was in the beginning.
Yeah.
No, thank you. No money.
That's where these the title credits. I mean, it's cropped in. But
yeah, there's like dots, like bullet holes that say "blow up."
Yeah.
And if you look through the holes, there I am. So that's that.
So in a very short space of time of you being here, and I know you're being slightly playing it down, but you obviously knew what you were doing. Maybe you couldn't explain that, but in a short period of time, you're working for big magazines. You've got the Sunday Times, and then
but it was all like the Sunday Times. There's all the time that I worked for Lester, I kept saying to him, how do you know what to do this? How do you know that? How do you... He said to me, the only thing I can tell you is that wherever I am, I look at the light. If I'm in a restaurant or a telephone booth or a taxi cab, I'm always looking at the light. So then I started working for the Sunday Times. I was going 3-4 times a week. I was shooting a prime minister, a doctor, a surgeon,
Is this for the magazine or
for the Sunday Times magazine,
Yeah.
column on Sunday. Brain surgeons, philosophers. Couldn't talk to them about what am I going to talk about? You know, magnum photographers will say, oh, I do all my research on this person and that person. I spend weeks. I said, really? I don't care what they do. It's what they look like or what I'm going to make them look like. But and they said, no, you can't do that. Well, most of the time I did. All I wanted to know is what they did for a living, you know, and then try and make it arresting, because the Sunday Times told me, you got 2 seconds for people to look at your picture, because maybe they start from the back anyway. Oh, yeah, they'll look at it. So bearing that in mind, you know, and the one thing that they did that was really good was they discovered, or if they discovered it, 4-color black and white. So when you shot in black and white, it was powerful. Anyway, moving on. So then 1964 or something, and I was shooting Kodachrome. So with Kodachrome, okay, for those people who don't know about photography, Kodachrome, you either got the exposure right or it was very wrong. And so the only way around it is to take the same picture, 3 or 4 different exposures. So if your light meter said the exposure is here, or the exposure is here, then you would do darker and lighter and correct. And with Kodachrome, sometimes a little bit too dark or a little bit too light would be magic. The colors would, something weird would happen.
But you can determine that in advance.
You never know, ever, ever, ever. So now I always told whoever I was shooting, I photographed the Queen, and I explained to her the situation. I said, you have to sit still for 4 of the same. And she did it. No problem. She just said, no problem. So when we did Jimmy, I thought, how can I make this guy look arresting?
So this is Jimmy, just for those who aren't watching, this is Jimi Hendrix shot for Electric Ladyland at the Roundhouse when it was a dump.
Yeah.
And there was because I remember asking you how you got the flames, and you had asked someone, this was, you could have killed the man.
Yeah, we could have killed or severely incinerated him, because what happened was I said, I want a wall of flame behind them. Great, let's do it. And so the deal was, Jimmy stood there, I'm where I am, and I did a few Polaroids to make sure without the flames that I roughly got the exposure right, because I try to make it look a bit nightclubby. I had one person with an incense stick in front getting the smoke there. But in the back, there were 2 guys. One guy had a tin of petrol, and the other guy had a Zippo lighter. Okay, so Jimmy says, okay, let's do it. So I said, right, pour it. So one guy in the back takes a petrol can and walks straight behind Hendrix and pours the petrol and gets to the other side. And I say, okay, light it up. The guy, is surprised he didn't get killed. He lit up the petrol and there was an explosion like a jet plane taking off. Hendrix didn't move, didn't turn or anything, and I started shooting. We had a wall of flame 20 foot high, and I took about 6 or 8 pictures because I had to go through this whole 4 different exposures. And then slowly the flames started dying. Like this picture here, you can see the flames dying on the right side. And that was it.
And then, because I've seen all of the session, you showed me the slides, and I don't think he even blinks the whole time.
No.
But then Mitch and Noel Redding come in at the side.
Ah, that's a different.
Was that a different shoot?
Yeah.
Right, but at the same.
No, that was in my studio.
But I'm sure that
We had incense sticks.
because the thing is with that, and that's even funnier then, because without that, they look so sweaty and pasty and uncomfortable, and he still doesn't blink.
No, he's cool. And they were, they were good, but not like.
I mean, no one's going to look cool.
Well, also,
next to him.
Color of his skin helps, Black skin really looks beautiful and it absorbs all the different colored lights I was using.
But then again, with this, you had no idea if this was going to work.
No.
Until
the only thing I had was a Polaroid, a black and white Polaroid. So that was that.
Now, was this before? So we've got the album cover, which is the nudes.
Naked Girls.
Yeah. So which came first?
I can't remember.
But you were commissioned to shoot an album cover. Yeah.
So then, what happened here was, the history of it is, Linda McCartney shot a picture in New York of a little black boy and a white boy in a playground, thinking this would be great for integration. Chris Stamp, the brother of
Terence Stamp.
And the other guys in the record company said, this is rubbish.
So Chris Stamp and Kit Lambert were managing the Who, but they set up Track Records.
Yeah. And then David King, who was the art director, sort of senior art director under Michael Rand, was the senior art. He was the guru
of the Sunday Times.
But he had 3 or 4 guys and girls, art directors, working under him that were all very talented. But David King, he was like us. He was a little bit not nuts, he was just a free spirit. And they come up with this idea of the Naked Girls. The other day I was thinking about who's the idea of Naked Girls behind Jimi Hendrix. I mean,
but was this the label trying to be a bit controversial?
Very, yeah. I mean, I've met so many men that bought the album and never listened to the record.
But also what's interesting about this is a few years ago you showed me, because the shot they chose wasn't, in your mind, the best technically, and the lighting. It was quite yellow and dark.
Oh yeah. So what happened was, so this is on Kodachrome, and they got these girls in nightclubs and odd bar girls, and they paid them £3 each to come down. So they came down to the studio. I'll give you the whole lineup to this. So they come down to the studio, take their tops off and go in. And I do a Polaroid of it and I show it to them, the art directors, and they say, no good. They got to take naked. We want them naked. So they say, no, we're not doing that. So they said, well, we'll give you £3 more. I brought it up to like £5. So they said, okay. And all the knickers go flying. Okay. So then I explained to the girls that I have to take each picture 3 different exposures. Okay. So we go through the thing, and naturally, on the one good exposure, like maybe one girl's blinking or looking away or blah, 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 blah. So the perfect picture on Kodachrome, it looked like an ad for Johnson's baby powder. Their skin was beautiful, just beautiful skin tones. And I gave it to David King. I said, here's my choice. Here's the other ones, blah, blah, blah. So then, I don't know, a month later, he calls me up and he says, if you want to come down and see what it looks like, come over my place. So I go over, and he shows me this picture, which is like a stop and a half darker.
Mm.
And I said, wow, your reproduction is really bad. And he said, no, I picked it on purpose. I said, whatever for? He said, because your picture was too pretty.
Mm.
And he said, I picked that because it was more grungy.
Yeah, no, it really is a different,
No.
and it's just not the same,
Yeah.
even though technically it's
Yeah.
perfect.
So then, as I'm starting, they say, we got these album covers of Jimmy, because Jimmy hadn't shown up yet. Can you have them holding the album? And I said, why would they hold the album of Jimmy? And they whispered to me, because he's not coming.
Were you expecting him though?
Yeah.
Right.
This was all to be around.
And presumably the girls were expecting him.
Yeah, everybody was there for Jimmy.
Nice.
So that's the story. Now, about a month ago, I'm laying in bed thinking about how ludicrous the whole idea of Jimmy and his rock and roll kit and the naked girls. And I thought maybe I could replicate it. So I go to the color lab and I say, here's a picture of Jimmy on his own. And here's a picture of the girls. Can we stick them in? So I made a very rough idea of it. And everybody looked at me like I was a pervert. I was wondering, how could I have ever done it in reality?
Yeah, yeah.
With a guy standing with all these girls sprawled all over the place.
But did you know when this was happening? Did you know it was going to be a gatefold?
I
Did
knew,
you have,
yeah. I left enough room for the
Mm.
gutter, but that was it.
And how, it's interesting, you said earlier about when they were talking to you about the Sunday Times that you've got
Yeah,
2 seconds.
that's right.
But do you think now a lot of that, people don't think about that you've got 2 seconds to make an impression, or there's going to be a gutter, or there's going to be type over, for editorial,
Yeah,
there's going to be type, and you have to think of all these things.
Well,
it's
you
not just
do.
getting a nice picture.
yeah. I mean, like even, we'll get to that one in a minute, but yeah, when you think maybe that picture is going to be a cover, well, you have to leave room on the top for the type.
Was this for the Sunday Times, Andy Warhol?
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting thing about him. This is all sort of in the same period of time where really, for the main part, I never took a flash gun when I went to photograph anybody. I mean, Jimmy was in the studio. So I go to New York to photograph him, very difficult character. And I was just hysterics going on, and he's carrying on and all sorts of stuff, and it was a hot summer's day. And by the time he said, okay, let's do it, I think I lost most of my compos mentis. And he was standing with Ingrid Polk, who was walking around.
Polk, yeah.
Bridget Polk, big fat girl, and she's walking around topless there with him. And so once again, I have to tell him I got to take the picture 3 exposures on Kodachrome. And he did it. And I mean, he did that pose, and it reminded me of like a butcher shop in the country where they got rabbits and pigs hanging in the window.
Did you know he was going to do that, like
No.
with his shirt?
No.
Were you?
He was hot.
Yeah.
It was just a really hot day.
So were you shocked when you saw his scars?
Yeah, I mean, that's, he died, I think, a year later. He had about 25 stitches, bullet wounds. And I did other pictures of them then, but for me, this was like really New York and grungy and dirty. And
well, it's very different from the usual pictures you see of Warhol.
And okay.
Now we're complete jump here, because I found this, but this was a Fleetwood Mac shot for Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone. So now, Mick Fleetwood, I knew his sister. I knew his sister. Yeah, I knew his sister. Somehow somebody worked in the studio as a secretary. And when I first met Mick, he was about 15 or something. And I met him at a party, and then he told me, I can't remember how many times I met him, that he was a drummer. And I was a drummer. So right away, how do you hold your sticks and all of that? And he said, oh, I'm in a blues band, and we're playing in the Chelsea Art School. Chelsea Art School, something like that. He said, come down and see us. Well, I never did. So then I bumped into him 5 years later, and he remembered me. He was really nice to me. The thing I didn't know was that none of these people spoke to each other.
So what, when you were doing the shoot, they were, that, I mean, yeah, it would have been at that time, yeah.
The bass player was divorced from Christine. Chrissy?
Yeah, Christine.
She was married to, what's his name, Lindsay Buckingham in the back. So they were divorced. And also, Mick and her were having a bit of a thing. So I had to separate all these people. And then Stevie Nicks, she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And when I saw her, before we took the pictures, she came in the dressing room, this little vision. And I was in love, you know. And I couldn't believe that she really was a unique looking thing. And she was really nice, nicest of everybody.
And where did you shoot this? Here or in New York?
No, in California, some guy's studio. So,
did you have much time with them?
Yeah, they were good. Yeah. I did that, and I did another thing with them, and it was difficult because they were difficult.
But now, for something like this, back then it was for Rolling Stone, so people were giving.
Maybe it was Rolling Stone.
I think it was Rolling Stone, but people are giving it. They're not like now where you get 30 seconds in a corridor. You were
no, and then we want to see proofs and all of that. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
And because if they'd asked, they would be told no. You'll see it when it comes out.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Here we go. Oh, so then this is
Sticky Fingers.
Sticky Fingers. So this is a promo shoot for Rolling Stone, Sticky Fingers, and they're all holding the album cover with the zipper in front of themselves. But then, so was this shot for the label?
Yeah, it was a promotion for Sticky Fingers. So they didn't know what they wanted. I had a really good art director called Arne Schwartzman, and he asked me to do it. I got paid £75 to do it. We did it black and white. We did it in color. The color disappeared. I don't know where that's gone.
I mean, there's a couple of versions of it show up, but not very good quality.
That's right. And so then the star of the show, he was the devil. And it was like a trip, you know. And I liked the Stones and everything, but he tried to show me who was the boss or who. So I love Mick. I think he's probably one of the world's, after Elvis, you know, he's a great entertainer and musician. And I said to him, look, my wife's waiting for me at home, but my dinner's on the table. Do you want to do this or not? Because it makes no difference to me. So what do I do? No. So we did that, and, you know, and I left all that stuff in, so you knew that it was in the studio. There's even a bit of the light over there. And that was it. He has great presence, Mick. He is quite a boy.
And then you've got some colour shots of them at the fish and chip shop on the King's Road.
Yeah, they were a bit more... Have you got that one?
No, I don't think we have that here.
Yeah, we did the fish and chip shop down the road from the studio, and then they just all had fish and chips and stood there. So that was nicer. and it was English. So I liked that because it was going to America. So, okay, now these boys here.
Yeah. So you've got quite a range of subjects. So now is this what, 78 with the Clash?
I don't know.
About that.
They were wild.
They look really styled.
Yeah, and
Good.
they look. Conrad, one of Conrad's son did the backgrounds for him. Jess, not Jess. I don't know. Nice guy, Sebastian, and so they got rid of him, and then we did this, and then we did another one where they're all jumping in the air. But I kind of like this picture. You know, just.
I mean, it's quite fashiony. You know, it really does. Like normally, the picture them, they're a bit more punk and a bit. I mean, they're given the attitude, but it is very.
And I like it because I was just using a normal lens on a Hasselblad and getting this composition with that guy leaning forward and like that.
And now by this stage, like, are you still excited or interested when you get a group like that? Did it matter? I know you said earlier on it didn't matter. You just wanted to know how good they looked. You know, how difficult was it to try and keep interested in?
Yeah, well, he was a brilliant guitarist. Levine is his name?
No, he was in...
the guy on the right.
Mick Jones.
Oh.
Paul Simonon, bass player.
Yeah, but the guy on the right, the lead
Mick
guitar.
Jones.
Is that Mick Jones?
Mick Jones in the pink.
Brilliant guitarist, I thought. Anyway, I thought they were good musicians and everything, not my kind of thing. But, of course, Joe Clash's father...
Strummer.
His father was an admiral, so can't get much better than that, you know. So they're interesting guys, and visually, I knew they were
they look
good
great.
meat for me, no matter how bad.
Now, this is more of a subject matter that you're interested in.
So here I had a little hand flash on my camera.
So this is Dolly. This is Dolly Parton.
Dolly.
Is this at Wembley? Is this
Wembley.
in the UK? Yeah.
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of country music, and I was doing a story for the Sunday Times on country music, and I spent all my time, I used to fly to Tulsa for the weekend just to hear music. And I had photographed her before, and she's a very nice person. So I was at Wembley, and this guy comes over to me, and he says, he was like a baggage handler at Heathrow, and he said, I got this cover of Dolly. Do you think there's some way I could get her to sign it? So I said, just wait here. So I go to her dressing room. In those days, you could get in, and also, as an aside, there was a big music promoter called Jim Halsey, and he had Dolly Parton and tons of people, Don Williams. And if Jim liked you, he had a little sticker of a rose, and he would stick it on you. Well, if you had that sticker on you at a concert, you could go anywhere. Any dressing room, pretty much. You just walk in. They see that, come on in. You were a friend of Jim Halsey. So I go in and I say, look, there's this guy out here. He'd like you to sign his back.
So he's got a tattoo of Dolly on his back.
Sure, honey, let's go. So she goes out there and she looks at it and she says to him, well, why anybody would choose to disfigure themselves like this, I don't know. But I'll sign it for you. And she signed his back. End of story.
Amazing. He's got pistols and a comb over.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Oh, there we do have the Stones at the chip shop. Yeah.
That's
that's a slide. Yeah.
Okay,
February 71. It says
this
on it.
picture was taken, I think, with a Kodak toy camera with a flash gun on the cube on the top that rotated.
Yeah.
That's what.
And they're throwing chips at you.
Trying to get a bit edgy.
Yeah, I think this is, you can see my camera reflection. I took pictures of the slides for some reference. Amazing, you still got it. Here's the Her Majesty. Right. So again, this was this the Sunday Times or the Observer? Or?
Now that's the funny thing. So I was working for the Sunday Times, but I wasn't the favorite by a long shot. And Lord Snowden, Tony, he would naturally get the first choice on everything. And if he was sick or in Bermuda, then the rest of us would get it. And so they asked me to, oh no, they didn't ask me to do anything, but I was only working for the Sunday Times. The Observer called me up and asked me if I would do it. And, well, first of all, I said no, because I just thought I was not technically and mentally equipped to take a picture of her, thinking of all the great Cecil Beaton pictures. And,
had you ever said no to any other job?
no, I don't think so.
But was it, like, the sort of nerves get the better of you here?
No, it was the, you know...
When they asked you? Like,
okay. You know, I don't know if you like Clint Eastwood, but there's one movie where the head of the police blows up in a car.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Clint
Dirty
says,
Harry,
every man must know his limitations.
Yeah.
And I've always is in the back of my mind. I mean, I've accepted a lot of jobs where I didn't know how to do it at all, but I figured I'd worm my way through it. But this was something else. And although it was an honor, and look, I live in England. This is my home, my adopted home. I love it here. Even when things are bad, I love it here. And I'm in debt to, as opposed to somebody that's born here, it sort of meant a lot to me. And I said I don't think I could do it, only because I was conscious of all the great photographs that had been done of the royal family. And here's little me and my 35mm camera. And I said, no, I don't think I can. And then the story is I go home and I told my wife that I said no, and she said I was an idiot, and I called them back and I said, if you haven't gotten anybody, I'd be happy to do it. But I called up the Sunday Times, who I was sort of exclusively on the bottom rung, and I said, the Observer has asked me to shoot the Queen, do you mind? And they said, no, do it. So then that's what happened. And then we went up to Balmoral, and I spent about 4 or 5 hours with her. And the final bit was, as I left, we walked out, her equerry, who was around. But when I did these pictures, there was nobody there.
Amazing.
Just her.
Wow.
I mean, I could have jumped her, or my assistant could have. It was just the two, that was it.
Yeah.
And
which is rare for any shoot.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody there, no hair, no makeup. She did everything. And as we walked out of whatever it's called, the palace.
Balmoral, yeah.
Yeah. He says to me, Her Majesty wasn't aware you were American. I said, well, now she knows. And that was it.
I love this picture.
Yeah. Now, this picture is interesting because what happened was they set up a big table for me near where I did the picture of her sitting on the floor. And I had all these cameras out and film and blah, blah, blah. Like cameras here. And she says, I'll go up and change because we're going to go outside. Fine. And I'm just standing, savoring the thing. And I see her going up the stairs 2 at a time. And I thought, oh my God. And I grabbed the camera. I didn't even know if I had film in it. And I shot it. And that's what happened. So the fact that A, there was film on the camera, B, that I got a slightly correct exposure and a little bit blurred, all two at a time, right up.
And what's great about this is, you know, obviously there's a lot of movement. She's running or jumping 2 stairs at a time. Her face is obscured. Everything's obscured, but you can tell it's her.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you never see a picture of her like that.
Yeah, no.
You know. And then the other shot, I don't know if we can go back to the picture of the Queen in front of the fire. Yeah.
Okay.
So with this, so were you able to sort of check the place out and see where you wanted to
Well,
take
they
pictures?
showed me the room, and all they said was, there's a chair over there by the window. It looked like some plaid chair from Peter Jones, dining room chair. He said, do not go near that chair. Sorry, that's Queen Victoria's chair. Okay. So she comes in, and I say to her, well, where do you normally sit? And the next thing, on the floor in front of the fireplace. Now, she's at least 15 feet away from the window. This room is like an airplane hangar. And she sat in front of that 2-bar fire, and I just said to myself, there is a God. Because I would never ask the Queen to sit in front of those things used to cost about £5 then, I think.
I mean, it's great, a little bar heater in this magnificent
and then
marble
the dogs came and sat down. And when it was over, I said, great, I think I got it. And I went to help her up, and she said, I'm fine, I can do it myself. And she's a tough girl.
No, it's great. Okay. And so you were obviously pleased that you took the assignment.
Very pleased. And then my life changed after that, because without going too deeply into how this country is structured socially, I lived on Royal Avenue. I had a house, 5 floors. I was paying £4 a week rent for. People thought I used to come down from Scotland to knock off the odd photo and go back up to breed cattle or something. And nobody believed I was just a normal person.
A drummer from Brooklyn.
Yeah, they just, and the people next door had retired colonels and majors, wouldn't talk to me. And then that came out, do come by for sherry and all of that stuff. And so then I realized that it was a great honor and not one to be abused. I never sold a picture to anybody. We never let anybody use it. If it was ever used, it was used by the Sunday Times on a birthday for Her Majesty. And they had to find her. She was on her private train in Bournemouth to get permission to use that for a birthday issue. So
she must have liked it.
So now
some more fashion.
Okay, so this is very interesting because this is Vidal Sassoon, the hairdresser, and it was for, I think it was Queen magazine, and the woman at the time, her name was Lady Claire Rendlesham. And she was a very outspoken fashion editor. And she comes down, and I was this young guy, right? I don't know if I had done the Queen. And she says to me, or to everybody, she says, I don't know why I'm here. I wanted to use David Bailey. And she kept on about David Bailey, which really made me kind of burn inside, but okay, I take the picture, and I developed the film by myself, and I made a mistake. I overdeveloped the film. So if the film was, say, 10 minutes developer, I went for like 13 minutes. So it did this. It overdeveloped it and knocked out all the midtones. It was a little bit reminiscent of what Bill Brant had done with his perspective of nudes, but believe me, it took me an hour to make that print. And I kind of liked it, and so that was that. So then people thought that was my style, but I never shot again like that. Well, maybe once, but I didn't, you know, but at least it had some sort of style, and I was using photography, and these things just happened to me. I didn't plan anything. I never plan anything. I never, even when they would show me a layout, I couldn't really understand it because I think I'm a bit this something or other, and I just do it. You know, it's like playing a musical instrument when you can't read the music and you just play it. So that's what happened.
But you know I was going to talk about it, but this is great. So I know you're not a big fan of this particular session, but it is, you know, one of the most famous sessions of the Who.
It wasn't my idea, actually. It was David King.
So, but you know, this sort of goes back to like what you were just saying. If something's not your idea, or you're literally there to take the picture of someone else, like, are you not so interested in that, or you know?
No, it's like songwriting and music. I mean, who do we like better, Elton John or Bernie? You know, I mean, where does
the lines are blurred?
Yeah. So once somebody has an idea, then you're a collaborator.
Yeah.
If you're doing your job right, and you're trying to get the best interpretation of this idea, which might only be a germ of an idea, but I'm not. Yeah, those, like the tin was specially made, you know.
So this is the Who Sellout album
the Who
cover,
Sellout,
which was a spoof on advertising.
And then
so Daltrey sitting in a bath.
So those are real beans from the tin, and Roger told me he almost got pneumonia from that because it was freezing in there.
And I remember talking to David King about it, and he said, speak to Roger Law, because he was...
Oh, Roger Law,
So Roger Law of Spitting Image fame, amongst other things. And I called him up, I think I called him up to talk about the Hendrix shoot, because we were doing a whole thing about the Linda McCartney concept, your cover, Donald Silverstein's portrait that was used in the album cover. And I said, like, why did you use all these different photographers? He said they used Donald Silverstein because they got him and the Vogue studio for a $5. But then when I spoke to Roger Law I was trying to speak to him about Hendrix, and all he kept doing was ranting about Roger Daltrey and how unpleasant, how happy he was that he caught pneumonia.
You know, the most pleasant guy on the shooting was Keith Moon. He was a pussycat, really. But they were all really nice.
But they were all like okay with the concept. They weren't turning up.
Yeah, they were just standing around watching me do it. You know, they were, and
But so why do you like every time I've spoken to you about this, or people ask it to you, you're very dismissive, and you know, most photographers would die to have a session like that under their arm.
Well, I don't know. I'm not too fond of that one, but I think we were getting tired by then. And
that's John Entwistle and his leopard skin.
Sort of, I don't know, maybe for the time it's okay. If you view it as the 60s or 70s, it's not like things on now. You just...
But like now, for instance, you're in a record store or someone's house
Yeah.
and you see an album cover with your picture on it, what do you think of? Do you remember the shoot? Or
Yeah, you can remember everything. It's
Mm.
like some girl you went out with in high school, and it wasn't a good experience.
So would you approach any of these shoots that we've looked at? I know this is a very small percentage of what you've
Yeah,
got, but would you do things differently?
a bit, yeah. I mean, for what it was then, and choosing the lens I used, and it was all a different visual concept from what was happening in the early 60s. I don't have to prove to anybody that I can do it.
Yeah, yeah. But was there a point where you were being commissioned or working, you thought, fuck this, I just want to, I don't want to do that, I want to do this?
No. I always, first of all, I was always happy to get a job. I didn't care what I took pictures of. No matter if I took the Queen one day, I would take a picture of a pop-up toaster for Vogue magazine the next day. To me, that's what I did. I took pictures, and it didn't matter who or what it was. I was using my camera for all these different things, and I was learning more about how to shoot a duvet cover, how to shoot someone putting a shoe on, drinking a glass of beer, smoking a cigarette, a homeless person, a drug addict. You know, it was just putting on a different hat. I used to think it was like those boxers that go in the ring every day and knock the champ down, and I was like the guy they were trying to knock down. So I always felt I had a spirit guide, and this spirit guide, I know it sounds funny, but when you look in the camera, it's magic. That's it. I enter another world. Sometimes I look and I see guys that I knew when I was 10 or 15 years old. And they were either bullies or we played hockey together. I see them there. I go in, and or the spirit guide just takes it does sort of take over, and most of the time I do what it tells me to do. Sometimes it doesn't come, then I'm in trouble, and then I have to think, right, what do I kind of do?
Because also you teach and have students that have done, talks at colleges and universities. But do you think, like, more or less everything you've described about how you work couldn't be taught, really? I mean, you got great advice from Lester and people like that along the way, but you still had to figure it out for yourself. Yeah,
well, I think it helps to have some DNA of some sort. But I relate this to music. I used to play drums, which might not be, it's not a melodic thing, but you were in music, as it were, and I was very privileged to be around great musicians. So, to me, the picture was like when a good chord is hit. I don't care how simple the chord is. When you hear that beautiful sound, that's what a photograph is like to me. And you can't really explain it. I don't want to explain it. I just do it. And if you don't like it, I'm not looking for compliments. It gets tricky because I'm very lucky. I was successful to a point. I mean, there's always another mountain. But I had enough success for 10 people. And how to live with that success and what people think of you or they imagine you're like, or they don't know the agony that you go through before, during, and after you know, you can take a great picture and come home and your wife will tell you you're a pig or something like that, or you're nothing to do with what you did. And there's all parts of your life, not only photography, I'm talking about autistic, I guess it's autistic in some way, that you, maybe you're lucky if you fortunate enough to hang around people that are doing the same thing and you pick up on the way they talk. But Gary Winograd, great photographer. Gary Winograd was very friendly with Lester Bookbinder, the guy that I work for. And Gary used to come up to Lester's studio and they'd all be drinking coffee, and you would have thought he was some guy from a delicatessen come up tired of cutting corned beef. He was sitting and cracking New York jokes and everything. And Lester said to me, he was walking down the street with Gary, and he said all of a sudden Gary saw, in London, Gary saw something, he ran off, clicked, and come back. He said, I have no idea what he did, but he saw something. And so I think that's where photographers, especially street photographers, we only sometimes have a moment to capture something. It could be a shadow or a God knows what, and to learn how to do that and know that the lighting's right, this lens will give you that, and each part of the lens has each f-stop can give you a different emotional feel.
We're going to wrap it up in a sec. There's a couple of nights a week you can catch the master and his washboard at work, and you'll see him around town with his camera. And anything you want to add? Anyone you want to abuse before we go?
Well...
Or praise?
Praise.
Anyone you didn't shoot yet that you want to shoot? Or wished you had?
I would have loved to have shot Elvis, I think.
On stage or off stage?
Well, no, I mean one-to-one.
Yeah.
One-to-one.
Yeah.
But...
what would your first question be to him?
No, I'd be cool. I'd be cool. I used to know his piano player, Glenn D. Harden, and for all the times I knew Glenn D., he would never say anything about Elvis. He just said, different world, different world. I'll tell you what I'd like to say. I'm very fortunate that I have several students that are women. And all through my teaching career, the women have always surpassed. They've always had this extra something about it. And I've got one girl now that helps me out, a woman, who takes the most fabulous pictures, and she comes from a mixed race family, so her children are dark, and so they live in both worlds together. And she takes pictures of black people on the street in their day-to-day life that gives the people dignity. They're not like, oh, poor soul. You know they're poor. You can just tell from their clothes, and you know that they're having a hard life. But they have dignity. She doesn't do it on purpose. She's just trying to take good pictures. And she takes these fabulous pictures on her old, well, now she has a new Canon, but they're just great pictures. And I know a couple of other girls that manage. Sometimes men, I feel, are too wrapped up in macho kind of thing, whereas the girls have a different psyche. So I think maybe also I've got some, in my masculine and feminine, there's enough feminine to kind of help me out a bit. I believe that's like Freud, you know, with the, I don't want to go into
that's a whole other podcast, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think that helps to get in, and just getting in touch with your subconscious when you're doing it. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much. We'll leave it
Okay.
there.